Hello, good evening, and welcome to Practical Christianity Bible Study. My name is Tunde Disu. Thank you for being part of tonight's program. Over the past 2 weeks, we were looking at the life of Abraham, looking at how his journey with God started, particularly looking at Genesis 15 verse 1, where it says, after all these things, and then we started going through some of those things that Abraham went through or experienced before we then started looking at what God said, the promises that God gave him, and how that played out in his life. But one of the things that we must also take cognizance of regarding the life of Abraham and his encounter with God is the fact that the key to all that transpired between God and Abraham was hinged on one simple principle. It was hinged on one simple key. That was this one thing that is the hallmark that undergird all that God said and all that Abraham did and the outcome for the two of them. And that key is what we're going to be looking at tonight. And it is the key that I have titled willingness and obedience. Willingness and obedience. You see, it is one thing for God to speak. It is one thing for us to hear the voice of God. It's one thing for us to understand what God is saying per time. It is one thing for us to have a vivid physical experience of God's presence, of His grace, of His blessing, of His anointing. You could hear an angel sing and all of that. But you see, that will still not give you the result, will still not manifest into what Abraham went through, what Abraham experienced as a result of his willingness and his obedience to God. So the key we're looking at tonight, or the two keys we're looking at tonight, is the willingness of Abraham to do as he's told, and the actual doing as he was told. So there is the willingness aspect, the commitment, the decision, the desire, the yielding of your heart. All of that is great. But until that is followed up with a physical action on your part, you've just gone halfway. You've just traveled from your house to the airport. You haven't boarded the aircraft that will take you to your destination. And so that other half is just as important, if not more important, than the first half, which is the willingness, which is the desire, which is the commitment to do. But you see, it is not enough for you to be willing. It's not enough for you to hear God. It's not enough for you to read and get a revelation. It is what you do that will determine the result that you will experience. So it is one thing to know that God created you for a purpose, with a purpose. He branded your heart with a vision and a mission. He committed His assignment to you and all of that. It's great to know that. It's wonderful to have that knowledge. But it's still not enough. You cannot fulfill God's purpose by accident. You can't fulfill God's purpose by just acknowledging it, by just thinking about it. No. You have to do something about it. In fact, being a person, being a man or a woman of faith, it's not even enough to guarantee that which God has said, that which you have heard, that which you have believed will come to pass until you do. You have to do. No wonder the Bible said, don't just be the hearer of the word, be doer. You have to do in order for you to see. the blessing. Moses knew the will of God because God told him at the burning bush, I need you to go to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to let my people go. It was clear. There was no ambiguity. There was no is it or is it not. He heard, he saw, he experienced. But you see, with all of that, there was still a responsibility on Moses. I've heard what you said, God. I am willing to do what you've instructed me. In fact, I am committed to going down to Egypt. But until he stepped out from that holy ground, from that burning bush experience, and he started walking towards Egypt, all he'd done was willing, he hasn't obeyed yet. That knowledge was not enough. Another thing is a lot of people started well, they heard, there was the willingness, there was the commitment, and then they started, but halfway through, they stopped. They gave up. They let it go. They let that initial willingness, commitment, and action to win. It is one thing to start, but starting is not enough. Starting is not enough. Matthew 24 verse 13 says, but he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. He that will endure, he that will see it through, he that will start it and finish it, she that will start and finish. It is not enough to hear it. It is not enough to believe it. It is not enough to be willing. It is not enough to give verbal commitment. Doing. The proof of what you have heard, of what you are willing, of what you have committed to, all of that, the proof for all of that is in what you do with what you've heard, with what you've seen, with what you believe, with what you have committed to and desire to do. Until you do, there is no proof. So it's not enough to seek God and seek his will for your life and pray and fast for his purpose, which is great. It's wonderful to do that. But the doing aspect is a proof of your obedience. Colossians chapter 4 verse 17, it says, and say to Archippus, take heed to the ministry that which thou hast received in the Lord, that thou fulfill it. He said, just tell this man called Archippus, he has received a ministry from God. He has received an assignment, a specific purpose from God. And everybody around him, about him, can testify that God has called this man, has branded him with a vision, has given him an assignment. But here is Apostle Paul saying, tell this young man, as good as all of that is, he's the proof that God is looking for is that you fulfill it, is that you obey, is that you carry it out, is that you do as you've been instructed. We all pray for the blessing of Abraham to come upon us. But when you look at the story of Abraham, when God said, get thee out of your land, of your father and your brethren and your kindred, the next verse, and Abraham departed. He didn't just hear it. He didn't just hear what God said and just sat there and said, okay, I need to finish this farming and make sure I harvest my crop, and when the cow started giving birth and my wife is... No. He heard. He was willing. He was committed. And he demonstrated his commitment by his doing, by his going. And as soon as he stepped out, God said, now I see your commitment. Now I see your obedience. And because of that, it was ascribed to him. It was credited to his account as righteousness. Question. Do you know what God's will is for you, for your life? Have you found out what is the purpose of your being? Why are you here? Why has God let you be till 2020? What is the purpose of your breathing in oxygen and breathing out carbon dioxide? What is the purpose of you sleeping at night and waking up in the morning? Why are you still able to function perfectly with all your faculties? Why has God preserved you? What is the purpose? What is it? Do you know it? But more than that, more than you and I knowing that, what are we doing about it? What are you doing about it? And I'm not talking just in terms of Christianity or no. Excuse me. God could call you into anything and everything. God could brand your heart with all I want you to do is to just smile at people, is to just be a blessing, is to just help somebody, is to look after the single mothers, is to go down to the homeless shelter and say, whatever God has branded you, maybe start a business, start that investment company, whatever it is that you know God has given to you as your purpose. What are you doing about it? What am I doing about it? Because until you are able to answer emphatically, without any ambiguity, that you know His will and you're doing something about it, you're just existing. You're not living. So if you already know His will for you, you know and you have the desire to pursue that will, the next step is that you must obey. And your obedience is a function, is a demonstration of not just the fact that you've heard God, you've listened to Him, you know what He said. No. Your obedience is a product, it's a function, it's a demonstration of the trust that you have in God. The only reason you will step out to do as you are told, when it is not out of dread of punishment or negative consequence, is because you trust the person that's giving you that instruction. No wonder Isaiah chapter 1 verse 19, Isaiah chapter 1 verse 19 said, if you be willing and obedient, you shall eat the good of the land. It didn't say if you pray. It didn't say if you fast. It didn't say if you give. It didn't say if you sing or dance. No. He said if you are willing and you are obedient, then every good of the land will be at your disposal. The good of healing, the good of prosperity, the good of peace of mind, the good of harmony, the good of sound mind, the good of everything will be at your disposal. When Abraham, like we did in the last 2 weeks, when Abraham heard the voice of God and he stepped out and did as he was told, even when he went into a land that is in famine, and the Bible said the famine of that land was very great. Even in the midst of that very great famine, the next thing we heard about Abraham was that he came out of the famine, of the land of famine. He came out rich in cattle, in silver, and in gold. Do you know why? Because he obeyed God. Because he obeyed God. If you choose not to be obedient, If you heard, you're willing, but you refuse to obey God. You refuse to do as you're told. You choose not to act on the instruction. Guess what? It doesn't change God. It doesn't take anything away from him. It doesn't reduce anything of him. It doesn't even stop or reduce his love for you, because his love for you and I is unconditional. But it is you that will not eat the fruit of the land. Not because God is wicked and God hates you and God wants to punish you and God is angry with you. No. No. Romans chapter 5 verse 6 said, while we were sinners, Christ died for us. So it's nothing to do about whether we did something for him and in return. No. When we didn't know him, he died. He died. And that reminds me, all this, oh, if you don't sing, God will punish you. If you don't serve, God will kill you. If you don't pray, God is not insecure. God is not insecure. All this conditional God relationship that people are preaching and talking about these days, that's not God. That is not a true representation of who God is. Because as far as God is concerned, he doesn't have love to give you. He is love by himself. And his love towards you and I, his love for us, his love in us, his love with us is unconditional. It is unconditional. That's why the Bible said God will allow his sunshine to shine on the good, the bad, the ugly, and the in-between. It's unconditional. But you see, there is what is the general, and then there is that which is the specific. There is that which is permissible, and there is that which is profitable. And the choice is yours. The choice is mine. Where we camp. As far as God is concerned, he's done all that is required of him to do. That's why he would say, I place before you this day life and death. Choose one. But just for your sake, in case you don't know what the difference is, let me advise you, choose life. But guess what? Even though he's advising you, even though he's prepping you, even though he's pointing out to you and I where to go, which to choose, he won't choose it for you. He won't choose it for me. God wants the whole world to be reconciled back to him. He has the power and the ability with the snap of his finger for the whole world to become born again and follow him. But no, he's not going to do that for you. It's a choice that you have to make. Because he gave you and I free will. And he will not violate that. People will tell you, oh, if you're not serving God, if you're not doing this, God will not use you. The truth of the matter is this. God only uses those who don't qualify. If you think you are qualified, then you're not useful to God. He used the lowly, the dirty, the unqualified, the one that has been written off, the one that has been forgotten. He picked them up from the miry clay, set their feet on a solid rock. He cleans them up, he shines them out, his glory radiates from inside of them. And even that same vessel, and anybody that sees that vessel, that comes in contact with that vessel will know that, yeah, I see you vessel, you're shining. I see the glory of God upon you, but I know this has nothing to do with your education, your background, where you come from, who your parents are, which country you were born, the color of your nose, and it has nothing to do with that. This can only be by his grace. Because God will not share his glory with anybody. So get away from anybody that is telling you you're not qualified for God to use you because of. Listen, God is not like that. God is not like that. God can call you, can brand you, can anoint you, can grace you. But you and I, we still have our own responsibility, not just to answer that call, but to put ourselves in a place where our ears are open to hear his instructions, his directions, and our hearts are receptive to trust him enough that he knows what he's doing, and our commitment, everything within us, is ready and committed to do as we're told. Because it is in the doing. It is not just in the willingness, it is in the obedience that you will see the goodness of God in the land of the living. But you see, because most of God's dealings with us are usually by instructions or corrections, just like your parents. And because most of them don't make sense to a natural mind, how can you say to a grown man, a family man with wife, with slaves, with everything, say, get up, leave this place. This is where you're born. This is where you grew up. This is your whole life has been in this village. And then one day, somebody you don't know, somebody you don't have any dealings with before, will then wake you up and say, get up, pack up, and go. Go where? He said, I will show you. Seriously? But you see, the things of God, in most cases, they don't make sense to a natural mind. But it takes the willingness, the commitment, the trust that you have in him and in his word. Because he said, heaven and all of the earth, they will melt away like wax. They will disappear. They will be no more. But not one jot of his word will fail. Your obedience, my obedience, is a function of the trust that we have in him who has spoken. If you are willing and if you are obedient, then you will eat the fruits of the land. If you are willing, if you are obedient, the land of its own free will yield its fruits and just overload you and overtake you and run you over with his blessings. Ask Abraham. He was willing, he was committed, and he was obedient. And because of that, the Bible said he came out of a land of famine, rich. Just try and understand that. Let's bring that to where we are today. The stock market has crashed, completely fall. The bottom is come off and everything is gone. The housing market is gone. The banking system is gone. Everything that we know as a source of wealth, of making wealth, of generating wealth, they've all failed. And yet in the midst of that, here you are being described as very rich. Remember, before all those things happened, you weren't rich. You were just Joe Bloke like all of us. But then this thing happened. The same thing that most people are dying from and being sent to early grave for. But here you are, coming out of it. Very rich. Not in speaking in tongues, not very rich in how many psalms you can quote and the passages of the Bible you can recite and how many churches you can lead. And it's when you sing, even the angels are wondering, wow, what is that? No. But you're rich in physical, tangible wealth. Because in the days of Abraham, it's measured in their wealth. It's measured in cattle, in silver, and in gold. And he was very rich. Question is this. Many of us, we have no doubt that God has specific instructions for us, has branded our hearts with an assignment, a purpose. So for some of us, he's even told us in our physical ears to say, this is your purpose. This is why you are here. But many of us are still not walking it. Do you know why? Because many of us are still waiting for another man to confirm what God has said. Oh, I'll just check with my bishop or my prophet, or I will send it to my people, the contractors that are praying for me to see if they agree with it. Some of us will say, please God, don't make a mockery of me. You know, for people like me, people like us don't do such a thing. Not for people like us. You remember the story of Gideon when the angel said, man of valor? He said, please, I think you got the wrong postcode. Maybe you should go to the next village because I am the least of the least. My village is the least of the villages, and my family is the last of the bottom of the last of the bottom of the bottom. Is that what is stopping you? You think you're not qualified? You think, who are you? Why will God want to use somebody like you? You think God made a mistake? You think this is a wrong person for God to be given such task and such assignment? Are you looking at your own inadequacies and your insufficiency and your inability in your own eyes? Like the 10 spies said, that in our own eyes we were like grasshoppers. Not in their eyes, but in our own eyes we were like grasshoppers. Is that what you're thinking? Or are you saying, well, I really want to do this, but I'm not just ready because, you see, I need to finish this project I'm working on. Then I need to make sure I've got this degree. Then I need to go and then... Are you putting some obligations and some things that you thought are more pressing in your way to doing what God has called you to do? Is that what this is? Can I tell you something? If we wait for everything to line up, if we wait for the conditions to be perfect, if we wait for the right wind to blow in the right direction and the sun to shine in a certain way and the stars to be lined up in a certain formation, then you won't do anything. You will be willing, but you will not be obedient. And therefore there will be no fruit of the land for you. I did a program some years back, and I said God is looking for fat people. I'm not talking of fat as in big size. No. God is looking for fat, F-A-T people. Who are they? People who are faithful, who have made themselves available, and who are teachable. What does it mean to be teachable? We have ears to hear, heart to receive, and commitment to do. Are you one of them? Am I one of those fat people that God is looking for? I don't care what you think you don't have. I don't care what you think you don't need. You haven't achieved. It is not about how far or what is going to cost. In fact, if the will and the purpose of God will not cost you anything, it's just your pipe dream, it's not God. David said, I will not give to God something that will not cost me everything. But one thing I know, God is too clever. He will not mismanage your destiny. He will not throw it into the trash bin. He will not cast you away by you obeying his will and following his instructions. In fact, in the Gospel of Mark chapter 10, Mark chapter 10 from verse 29 to 30, and Jesus answered and said, Verily I say unto you, there is no man that hath left house, or brethren, or sister, or father, or mother, or wife, or children, or lands for my sake and the gospel's, but he shall receive 100-fold now in this time. Houses, brethren, sisters, mothers, children, lands. It will come with persecution, but you will have it. You will have it. You will have it, because when you commit to God, you put his back against the wall. You obligate him to come fighting for you, routing your enemies, clearing the path for you, pouring his blessings on you. But you must show that you trust him by your willingness and your obedience. In fact, can I tell you this? Whatever in your life you think is so valuable and of so great price that is stopping you, or that will stop you from obeying God, that thing is not just an idol in your life. That thing has become your God. Proverbs 29:25. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 25. It said, the fear of man bringeth a snare, but whoso putteth his trust in the Lord shall be saved. Shall be saved. Everybody's got this group of people in their lives called they. What will they say? How will they respond? What will happen when they hear about this? Who are these people that are they in your life? Maybe they are the ones stopping you, hindering you, holding you back, not just from obeying God, but from eating the fruits of the land. If you can break free from the clutch of man to obey God, if you can break free from the condemnation and the excuse me, and the fear of they, if you can just release yourself from the claws of man and just obey God, you know what will happen? God will now use you to become a blessing to that same group of people that you were afraid of, so much so you almost not obey God. But it starts with you being willing to let them go, to wash your hands off them, to let them say what they want to say, to let them condemn you and criticize you and abuse you. But just know that when you do that out of your obedience to God, what they meant for evil, God will use it to raise you up. The same people like Joseph's brother, they will come bowing down before you, say, please, bless us, help us. Hearing the word of God is not enough. Hearing the instructions of God is not the same as doing. But this is another aspect. doing it is also not the same as doing it continuously. It is one thing to hear God, to be willing, to commit, to obey, to start doing it, but you must continuously do it. In James chapter 1 from verse 22 to 25, he said, "But be ye doers of the word, and not hearers only, deceiving your own self. For if any be a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like unto a man beholding his natural face in a glass. For he beholdeth himself and goeth his way, and straightway he forgot what manner of man he was. But whosoever looketh into the perfect law of liberty, which is the word of God, and continueth therein," not look at it and go, no, continually therein, "he be not a forgetful hearer, but a doer of the word, this man shall be blessed indeed in his deed." You heard God. There's a willingness in your heart. Then you take the first step to do as you're told. That's not enough. You have to continuously do, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, until you hear, until another instruction is given. And as you continue to do what you have been told, what you have heard, His blessing, His blessing will be upon you. Your ability and continuity is a product of your willingness, which produces the fruit of your doing, which is the obedience of God. When you do continuously the will of God, you are bound to eat the fruit of the land because of your obedience. When you don't trust God enough to obey and follow His instruction, when you don't trust God enough to obey and follow His instruction by doing what He has told you, guess what? The enemy, the accuser of the brethren, Satan, will capitalize on that fear and that's your mistrust of God. And he will not just talk you out of that particular blessing, but all the blessings that are lined up for you. Satan will not just attack you with fear. He will also attack you with different things and rob you of many things just because you allowed him in that one place to get to you. He is the accuser of the brethren. When you disobey God, even your heart is grieved. You know in your heart, ouch, that hurts you. Do you know why? Because your spirit communes with His spirit that is in you. And so when you disobey, you grieve your spirit and His spirit. The true test of your faith is the corresponding action, which is a function of your obedience. And it is in that obedience that you see the fullness of the fruits of the land. Your action, what you do based on what you've heard, is a demonstration of your faith. It's a demonstration of your trust. It's a product, it's a confirmation that you trust the God who has given the instruction. But because God's instructions are usually not comfortable on our flesh, it's not something we can reason out from our heads. It's not something that we can go to the library and read about. It's not something we can Google and find a corresponding reference for it. Many of us will back off from it. But you see, to obey God, you have to trust Him. You have to trust Him. Not trust Him just based on the instruction. You have to trust Him based on His own integrity. That He can do what He said He can do. He can bring to pass that which He has said. But because we can't see that end product from where we're standing, we're tripping and shaking and fidgeting and wondering, well, maybe, what if, and now, what if, and what if? Your action is a demonstration of your faith, which is a function of your trust in Him who has spoken. Your obedience, which is your action, gives either God or Satan dominion over you. Because Romans chapter 6 verse 16 says, know ye not that to whom you yield yourselves servants to obey, his servant you are to whom you obey, whether of sin unto death or obedience unto righteousness. The key, as I close, the key to experiencing the fullness of all of God, not just what He wants to give you, but all of Him. Because our inheritance as Christians is not the house or the car or the youth or the business or the... No. Our inheritance as Christians is God Himself. That's our inheritance. That is our inheritance. God Himself. Every other things that we have been consumed by and consumed with and focused, those are just the trimmings, the gravy on the plate. Our full inheritance is God Himself. And the key to experiencing the fullness of that inheritance, to experience, to own, to become the rightful owner of that inheritance, is your willingness and my willingness, followed by unreserved, unquestionable, continuous obedience to God. My prayer tonight, ladies and gentlemen, is that the Spirit of God that causes us both to will and to do will overshadow us and help us to understand what we're sharing tonight. The power of willingness and the benefits of obedience. And as we combine those two, we become unstoppable. Things will just happen. Look at Abraham. I mean, God gave him promises, and then when he stepped out in obedience and started doing, God just turned around and said, no, that's not enough. The blessing is not just for you. It's for your generations, which you and I are partakers of. Because one man was willing and was committed to obey God. Thank you so much for your time tonight. I hope some things that I've said tonight will resonate with your heart, will make you think and ponder and consider and examine those areas of your life where you have the willingness, where you are committed, where you have the desire, when everything you want to, But you must take it beyond wanting to. You must do. You have to do. You have to do. It is in the doing that the result is produced. You can have a bag, a house full, a warehouse full of raw materials. Until those raw materials get onto the production line and those machines start to work on them. And the quality control manager is checking at every point of production to make sure the quality is good, and the end product comes out, then you put your stamp on it to say, I vouch for this product. If all you have is a warehouse full of raw materials, you're just willing, you're not obedient yet. The blessing is in the doing, not just in the hearing. God bless you. Have a great, wonderful rest of the week. And I will see you again sometime next week. God bless you. Bye-bye.